Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. I've got my sister's dog Gizmo with me right now. We're babysitting him for about a week and a half while she's out of town, so he's going to be in a few of the videos. I feel like right now I'm not doing 2 Q&As every week, so I'm going to do, instead of 2 parts with 8 questions, I'm just going to do 10 questions each week for now, unless I just change my mind on that. It just makes my editing and everything a lot easier to do. And it gives me a lot more room to answer a lot of those questions or good questions I might see through there later in the week in their own full videos. All right, so let's get this started. First question. Hey Jason, if you want to be fit and have a good endurance, would it be better to do 20 minutes of cardio 6 times a week or 40 minutes of cardio 3 times per week? Thanks, man. All right, we're getting training frequency and things confused. When it comes to strength gains, we know that higher frequency usually equals more strength gains. More strength gains usually equals a little more muscle mass. So on a lift, doing it 3 times a week is probably going to give you more potential strength gains until drugs and things come in the mix that mess with all your adaptations. Then doing once or twice and 6 times, in many cases we found studies on it, gives slightly more strength gains than 3 times a week. However, when it comes to cardio, you need to think about the endurance component. If you're doing cardio to improve your endurance, which is what was asked, longer endurance sessions build more endurance. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure how there could be any confusion there, but a lot of people are new to a lot of this and they don't understand. They don't know that. If your goal is to build like a strength stamina using some type of interval training, higher frequency of intervals with less duration would probably be better. But if your goal is to build more endurance and cardiovascular capacity, then longer sessions are going to do a better job, even if they're less frequent. So pretty straightforward. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I just wanted to ask if there is any actual benefit in swapping cardio machines in the same workout. I always see cardio bunnies doing it, and to me it just seems pointless since the main goal of cardio is to elevate your heart rate so you burn more calories. Thanks. The reason for this is that a lot of times various muscles get tired. For example, a lot of women, you'll see them doing this who do a lot of cardio. Actually, my girlfriend does this too. They might do 20 or 30 minutes on an elliptical, then their arms start to get fatigued, their upper body gets fatigued, and so they switch over to something else so that they can continue to do cardio and continue to keep their heart rate elevated with muscles that are more endurance oriented and better at it, their lower body. So they might go from an elliptical to a treadmill or a bike. And that's kind of the reason they're doing that, is so that they can keep their heart rate elevated and keep working on their endurance and cardiovascular capacity without having to work as many muscles. Now, if they're swapping around randomly, probably no benefit to that. But if someone's doing something like an elliptical and then they want to switch to just lower body as their upper body starts to get fatigued so that they can continue to burn more calories and continue to build endurance, that's what they're doing, and I can see the benefit to doing that. But again, it's just because certain muscles are going to get fatigued and you don't want them to feel fatigued, and you want to continue to burn calories and keep your heart rate up by working muscles in a slightly different way or a slightly different emphasis on different muscles, again, purely due to a fatigue component. All right, next question. Hey Jason, you said in the past that if you're already in a caloric surplus, adding more and more calories won't build any extra muscle. No, it's not what I said. I said you'll get massively diminished returns. You say a 10% surplus is enough. Why does Dr. Mike Israetel recommend gaining at least 2 to 3 pounds a week? He recommends this for all trainees, not just newbies, and says that trying to make lean gains is futile. This is because he works with a lot of advanced athletes, Dr. Mike does, and so the issue is that they struggle to gain muscle in general. And by overfeeding them, you force muscle gains, because the reality is you have more insulin, more IGF-1. A lot of anabolic hormones in your body come through sheer calories that you produce. And the more food you put in, yeah, you will see more muscle gains. The problem is that beyond a certain threshold, it becomes more and more of a diminished return. At a certain threshold, you're going to start gaining twice as much fat as muscle. And then you go beyond that, you're going to start gaining 3 times as much fat as you gain muscle. Now, his idea with what he promotes is that you only have a short-lived anabolic window to where you can gain muscle rapidly, and then it just starts becoming body fat gains. So Dr. Israetel likes to have his people, his athletes, bulk really hard and gain a pound a week for 12 weeks straight, or up to 2 pounds a week. So they're going to gain 12 to 24 pounds in a 12-week window. And he might even have breaks in there to where they go back to maintenance and recomp slightly and then go back to the bulking. But you're looking at, and so it might go up to 16 weeks with, every month a little 2-week gap of maintenance. But they don't gain that much weight overall. They end up gaining a large amount of muscle, like up to 50% muscle doing it that way. and then go into long, slow cuts where they preserve all their muscle. So it might be a 12-week window of bulking followed by a 4 or 5 month window of cutting behind it just to trim the fat away while keeping all the gains. And he's just trying to maximize gains and maximize body composition over time. And that does work, but again, it's got to be a very structured diet to do that, or your body fat gains will get out of control. And that's the reason he has people do it that way. It's, again, to maximize on that window to where you can gain muscle with less fat, and then you're going to go ahead and gain fat while you do it. It's just not going to be as bad as if you had done a really prolonged bulk. And again, it has to do with the nature, the timing of the way that Dr. Israetel recommends people do things. That doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. That's just in his experience of how he prefers his athletes to do things. And it does work. It's very effective, but you need to understand the context in which he's having people do it. All right, next question. Can front squat be used alternatively with back squat on your novice program? I have reached a point where it is unrealistic to do 5x5 squats 3 times a week with progressions. Just can't recover. That's too much. If alternate between back squats on workout A and front squats on workout B, is that fine? No, you're not going to recover from front squats. If you're pushing front squats as hard as I require you to push back squats in the program, they're going to bury you just as quick. You may be reaching a point where you're simply too advanced to progress with linear progression on any sort of high volume squatting like that, because people don't realize that 5x5 sets across done 3 times a week is extremely high volume. You might need to change programs at that point. If you're getting to a point where you're just stalling over and over, you're probably squatting 300 plus already on the 5x5. It's time to change programs at that point. If you just keep stalling and you can't recover from that. Again, it's the progression. You've outgrown the ability to use linear progression anymore, in which case you need to go to some sort of periodized program most likely. But the changing to the front squats instead of the back squats is not going to resolve your issue at all. All right, next question. Hi, Jason. How would you come back to the gym after a week or 2 off due to business traveling? Add cardio, do the percentage of weight you were doing before leaving, drop the weight. What can you do in a hotel room in order to at least try to maintain while abroad with little to no access to a gym? Thanks. All right, first of all, when you're abroad doing any sort of work, you need to do some sort of exercise. I don't care if it's push-ups, chin-ups on your door frame, body weight squats in your bedroom. You need to be doing some sort of strength training to try to maintain what you have. Now, that being said, a week or 2 off from the gym with just some body weight stuff done in there could possibly count as a deload. So what you need to do is factor it into whatever program you're running, count it as a deload. If you're not running a program with any sort of scheduled deloads, maybe cut your weights 10% on the first week back and then ease right back into your program. If you were running some sort of periodized program, same thing. Go back to the week that you were on, cut the weights maybe 10%. So if you're doing squats of 300 pounds, do them with 270 for the same reps, and then ease back into the next week of your program as if you had been in it normally. And that's how I would personally handle it, or have someone handle it who I was working with who had to travel abroad and go on business for a week or 2 at a time and really didn't have access to good facilities. All right, next question. Hi, Jason. I know you were mostly doing pause bench when training for powerlifting. Is there any advantage to doing a touch and go work as accessory to keep everything bench related paused? Also, is there any advantage to doing pause work if you're not a powerlifter? I think there is. Cleaner reps for me. Just wanted your opinion. The reality is when it comes to any sort of pressing, particularly chest pressing, the pausing on the chest is generally going to give you better pec development. You're required to recruit your pecs more out of the bottom. It's harder to get the weight moving. It requires more chest involvement. Doing touch and go, as long as you're not bouncing, but true touch and go, is going to let you use slightly more weight. And because you're using more weight and you're moving it through more of the workout motion and not having the pause on the chest as much, you're using a little bit more of a stretch reflex to kind of get things moving. It's going to work your triceps a little more effectively. So touch and go is going to be a slightly better tricep builder. Pause is going to be a slightly better chest builder. And that's the way I would look at it. And again, I generally recommend that people do pause purely because if you're pressing for your chest, you probably want to get as much chest development as possible. You can always go back and add extra tricep work. And that's usually my logic behind that, even for guys who are doing it purely for hypertrophy. All right, next question. Hey Jason, thanks for all the answers to your questions over the past weeks. I was on your 5x5, then I started slipping, went and saw a doctor, and the doctor said it was all good. So I decided to do Johnny Canditio's linear program because it would give me the extra bit of recovery time that it seems like I needed. I got my diet in check and sleeping much better, and as a result, I'm getting stronger at a pretty fast rate. My opinion is, do you think JC's LP program is going to give needlessly slow progression for a novice lifter, or should I just keep with this whole if it ain't broke, don't fix it attitude? Someone else replied and answered this question, and they said that, as I've said in the past, if you're running my novice program and you're not eating a lot of food and sleeping a lot, you're going to flounder on it. It is for people who are willing to truly bulk, meaning 10% calorie surplus every single day, probably gaining half a pound to a pound every single week, who are getting a minimum of 8 hours of sleep a night. If you can't do those things, you're going to flounder on the novice program. You're not going to recover. So it is not for everyone. It's for people with a lifestyle focused on that. And if you can't, I have a linear progression program, not exactly like Johnny's, but my own, that I recommend in place for people who can't recover. Now, that being said, is Johnny's program suitable for your goals, given that you are struggling due to your lifestyle and other factors to recover to the novice 5x5? Yes, absolutely. Johnny's linear program is actually a pretty good program. It's one that I approve of and one that I like. All right, next question. Is it possible that an athlete could be unaware she is taking PEDs and therefore genuinely believe they are clean? For example, a coach or team doctor could tell the athlete that it is an anti-flu injection or something when in reality it's test or whatever. You might have some experience with this from your work with college athletes. All the college athletes that I work with knew exactly what they were taking. We discussed it in detail. They knew exactly when to inject it, when not to inject it, so they get around their drug testing. In the past, when drug testing wasn't as prevalent as it is today, you did see a little bit of the stuff that you're talking about, but in the modern world today, all the coaches, all the doctors know that these athletes are going to be drug tested. The athletes know that they need to be on drugs. Everyone in pro sports is on drugs for the most part. Don't let anyone bullshit you, tell you otherwise. They need to know what they're taking because they need to know how to get around their random testing. And so generally their coaches and doctors are keeping them up to speed on it. So anyone who's claiming, oh, I must have got a flu injection from my doctor who spiked me with a drug. Look, if a doctor or your coach spiked you with a drug that you didn't know you were taking today and you're a serious athlete with a big contract, you could sue them for millions of dollars and they would lose their job. So anyone who did this would be stupid. They'd be risking their own career. It's generally made very clear to athletes what they are taking and how they need to get around the drug testing with it because of the nature of the drug testing today and the large amounts of money on the line. People don't gamble like that anymore. So that's pretty much unheard of today. All right, next question. Jason, how do you keep your cholesterol in normal range when you're eating a lot of high-fat meat, especially when you're in TRT and Test is known to increase bad cholesterol? Cheers from the Philippines. Actually, this is something I want to talk about later in videos. It's because I do a ketogenic diet. I'm eating a high-fat diet, but I'm on a keto diet. My blood work tends to look really good. And I want to discuss a lot of the research I've seen over that made me change my stance on the keto diets, because people have said, oh, you flip-flop. No, I flip-flop based upon all the research and data I was reading. And instead of looking at the USDA's consensus and the FDA's consensus, I stepped back and looked at more of the actual research and data and changed my mind. Generally, people who are on ketogenic diets have really good lipid profiles. And in my experience, it's enough to offset any possible negatives from moderate testosterone use. Not the amount guys are blasting in, serious sports and bodybuilders, but people who are near prescription doses. In my experience, it's enough to offset it and make your lipid profile look pretty good for the most part. So that's really what's going on. It's the nature of the diet. And dietary cholesterol like that doesn't always actually make your cholesterol worse. That's a bit of a myth. It's not been found to be true that your total cholesterol or your bad cholesterol is going to go up purely from eating large amounts of dietary cholesterol. It's a myth that's not found to be true when we look at the actual empirical data. All right, next question and last question for the week. Hey, Jason, I was a guy who asked you about fasting after refeeds last week. Yeah, I remember that one. And you said that it wasn't good. It might be a sign of an eating disorder. My question this time is, what should you do if they binge uncontrollably after a cut due to an eating disorder from a drastic cut? All right, this is where this stuff gets complicated. This is why I tell people you need to be careful when you go do drastic cuts. You need to be careful when you cut too lean. If you're at a point to where you feel the need to binge massively after a serious long cut, then maybe you're cutting too lean and too fast for yourself, and you need to avoid ever doing that again. If you're a competitive bodybuilder, you don't have a choice. It's very common among them. They accept that they're going to develop eating disorders and binge eating as a result of competing in bodybuilding. It just goes along with it. You're going to be fucked up as a result of it. It's one of the reasons I don't promote competitive physique endeavors. I think they're unhealthy, and this is the examples of why they're mentally unhealthy. Every single one of my friends who competes in bodybuilding, and I know some really good guys who do, they all have this problem. They all binge eat immediately after. And you know what? For those guys, that's a good thing, because the last thing you want to do is stay at 6% body fat for weeks or months at a time. So the best thing they could possibly do is fatten up to 10% as fast as possible, preferably inside of a week. No problem there. For your other guys who aren't competing, you need to step back and assess of why are you cutting so lean and hard that you're getting these are just a binge. What's going on there? Is it really worth it to you? And if you're having a problem with binge eating in general, as a result of your fitness lifestyle, then yeah, it is time to go talk to a specialist, talk to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, and see if they can help you resolve your issue, because it is generally psychological at that point. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.